When we both say optimal, we are taking into account many different contexts: enjoyment, sustainability, personal preference, physiology of what is actually physiologically optimal is just one piece of that context of what is actually optimal. Man, at the end of the day, what's the point of all this? The point is to stay in the game for as long as possible. And so that's optimal. What's going to get you to stay in the game and not quit today and continue to go and continue to do it and find enjoyment in it?
What's going on, friends? Welcome back to another episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. If you are new here, welcome to the show. My name is Jared Hamilton, and I am your host, and I'm excited to bring to you another guest. On today's show, the guest of the day is my boy, Jordan Lips. A lot of you guys that follow me, you follow Jordan. Jordan is an incredible human. He's such a good man. He has such great content, which is why I brought him back on the show. Actually, it's been years since him and I have chatted on the show or anything like that. But Jordan is incredible. Jordan has some of the best content there is around all of this stuff. But again, that's why I brought him on the show. I bring you guys some of the best guests that I can find. And Jordan is definitely no strangers to that list. So in today's episode, we got into a lot. Just looking at my notes, we got into a lot of what the main issues are that's keeping people from getting to where they want to be, from Jordan's perspective, about whether it be their habits or from a mindset perspective, that kind of thing. So we dive into that. We talk about things that the balance of optimal and practical. That's the big thing and why I wanted to talk with Jordan is because most people get stuck in this battle of this is optimal, but then the more optimal you get, the less practical it gets. And then there's a point of fall off where it's if practical is not optimal, or if optimal is not practical, then it's no longer optimal. So we talked about that, and where's that balance of having a plan that does follow, that is practical for you to do, but also is optimal enough to cause the results to happen that you're looking for. Then we also kind of took a turn, and Jordan and I got into dad stuff because Jordan is expecting. They're about to have a baby, him and his wife. So massive congratulations to them and all the things. But that's a whole other realm, right? And I wanted to see on his perspective of how he plans on approaching food with the young one and things like that. So we went all over the place. It was a great conversation. If you like my style of content, Jordan is right up your alley as well. So I know you're going to enjoy it. Be sure and subscribe to the show if you haven't already, and I will talk to you in just a minute. What's been new in the life of Jordan Lips?
Yeah, man, we were just talking before we hit record about that. It had been a while since we chatted, and I was going to look up exactly the last time we talked on my podcast, what episode that was, but I know it was in the first year. I've been doing one episode a week since the beginning of time, and I'm on episode 200. So basically 4 years in. And if I look back, I'm scrolling back. Where are we here? We're in the 30s. I got Kim Schlag. I know you're in that, you're definitely in that batch of people that I have in podcasts, but it's been years, man. So episode 12, dude. Wow.
Holy
what a time.
Shit.
Holy crap, dude. 12th episode. And I was sitting at my dining room table. Whatever, man. Listen, people are always what do I need to start a podcast? And I have some fancy equipment now, but back in the day, it was laptop, at the whatever, just a Zoom call. I was taking a Zoom call. So yeah, good times. We have moved since then from Jersey to Texas, from Texas to North Carolina. I'm in North Carolina now, in the Raleigh area. My wife is 30 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
We are expecting our first baby, a little girl. We got 2 dogs. We got a second dog, I guess, since that time. That's funny because I remember my puppy was on my lap, and now she's 4. So that's exactly a good timeline of that. So yeah, things are great, man. We were saying, what am I up to these days? The same, but more online coaching, people with a wide range of goals. I run a group program for people who want to exercise, a little bit of a cheaper option, which I think is awesome. I think it's very accessible.
Yeah.
And doing a little bit of hybrid coaching. I hate that word, just helping people incorporate cardio as well into their life and not just lifting. Which is, a recent passion of mine these days.
Nice, dude. Here, along those lines, here's a question. Since we've chatted last, let's say 3 years, however long, 4 years, whatever it was, what are some things you've changed your mind on?
Oh my God, a ton of things, a lot of things. But what's interesting? We'll go through that. But what my knee-jerk response is actually so much has not changed. And I mean that in a good way where the things that were important then, the big rocks, it's not, and I enjoy the fact that those big rocks aren't flip-flopping. It might seem like they're flip-flopping, and I talk about this sometimes on social media. If you're scrolling on your feed and the sentiment you get from your feed is that we don't really know that much about nutrition, or like we don't have all that much figured out about how to be healthy, like you're following the wrong people. Like we do, we know a ton about how to be a healthy person. And so what's cool is like a lot of that stuff has not changed. If I had to think of some of the things that I have changed my mind on, whether it's a 180 or just sort of updating, I've become less bullish on protein, not its
Really?
importance in general, not its importance in general, but from a numbers perspective. And that's relative to me, of course. So I might have been 4 years ago, kind of mailing it in saying, you got to eat a gram per pound of body weight.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's like the minimum, or that's something everyone should shoot for. And I think that was just a little bit of just lacked some nuance and real understanding. And I did what I think everybody who gives that recommendation does, which is lean on the fact that that's really easy math. 1 gram per pound of body weight. We all know kind of generally what we weigh. And so, yeah, it's just bro math. But in the last several years, we've just, every time we look at the literature, the recommendation comes down. And when I say the recommendation, I mean the point at which we start to see diminishing returns goes down. And so even at that like 1.2 to 1.4 grams per kg, which is like somewhere in that like 0.6 to 0.7 grams per pound, we don't really have amazing research that more than that is super important. So I'm not saying don't have more. I'm not saying that there's no benefit to more, but that's been a really cool, really fun thing where like, hey, if you're someone who's not like a huge protein eater and you can get yourself to like 0.6 grams per pound, like I think you can, and you can say, hey, this is the style of eating that allows me to feel really good. You can rest easy knowing you're not really leaving a lot of gains on the table. And so it does really open up an ability for people to eat in the way they want, with a little bit more freedom. So that's been a really fun one.
That's good. I like that. I think protein's an interesting conversation. And I would agree. I think most people, take that too far, especially I like to look at things from the side of like, well, what have we been eating? Like I was chatting with a lady yesterday, and she went from 60 grams a day to 100, like 30 grams a day. I'm like, that's a hell of a jump. Like if you're not used to eating chicken and beef and you're in fish and that much protein, over doubling in a 24-hour period, that's a lot. Versus I think like people's lives will be different if they go from 60 grams to 80. And then it's like, cool, do that for a few months. Now 80 to like 95. And I think it's along the same lines.
Yeah. And if I were to play my own devil's advocate, I think that there's, if I were to say, hey, 0.7 grams per pound of body weight is where we start to see diminishing returns, there is a really good shout for people to say, hey, if I'm in a larger body, that is a lot of protein for me. And that's that multiplier is super high. Can I go lower? And the answer is yes, you can. That multiplier might actually be more than what is required where we start to see diminishing returns. But I don't want to go too far on that either, because usually, not to, again, I would never say it like this, for lack of trying to curb it a little bit. It's like, you've probably been like, not eating enough protein is probably something you've been doing for a long time. And so I wouldn't like scoff at this as a tool of like, that's probably too much. It's like, yeah, but like you've also probably spent the last 10 years under eating protein. So let's not round down too far. Even if you're like 0.7 is a lot, I'm like, I know it's a lot. I like what you said, stepping gently towards that number, maybe not in an overnight way, but in the same breath, someone's like, well, I don't have to eat that much. I'm in a larger body. And I think that there's a totally physiologically speaking merit there, but I also don't want that to be like, eating more protein is probably on the short list of things that you should probably be doing. And so I don't want to round that down too far either.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Anything else on that list of stuff you've like major, like say bigger things that you, in the past few years that you've changed your mind on?
Yeah, definitely the cardio, definitely in the last 6 months, 8 months. Everything from my understanding of interference, the interference effect and how it might, interfere with your ability to build muscle and strength. And, more than that, I think I told myself that stuff. And when I say that stuff, I mean, hey, if you're going to do cardio, it's going to be tough to build muscle, or you don't need anything other than lifting and walking to be healthy. I think I'm not saying lifting. If you lift weights, you do a decent amount of movement, you walk, you don't have too much body fat, you manage stress, you eat your fruits and vegetables and stuff, like, dude, you're killing it. You're absolutely killing it. But I probably wouldn't have spoken up if somebody said, hey, if you're walking and lifting, that's all you need. I probably back in the day wouldn't have, perked up and been like, actually, and I think now I would say, hey, actually, there is scope. If we look at the pie chart of health, there's probably a portion of that pie chart that's, you're just not going to get those exact benefits if you don't do some form of cardio that's harder than walking. And I leave that door wide open because
Sure.
walking being like on the low intensity spectrum, which by the way, I'm the biggest advocate of walking. I love walking. This is not anti-walking, but yeah, I think I wouldn't have spoken up as much about it. And I think now I'd be like, well, it's in fear of giving people yet another thing that they feel pressured to do, which is the thing I'm combating right now, which is like, man, people are trying to do some of their hard basics. And here you are, there's all this zone 2 talk now of like, and I get this feeling that people are like, oh my God, here's another thing I have to do. And so in fear of not making people feel that way, I think that as we work on building some of these foundational habits, I think there's scope of, hey, if your goal is to be, is to take this from a health perspective, that getting your heart rate up and doing something a little bit more strenuous, cardio wise is something that should find its way into your routine at some point without overly stressing about it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like right now everyone's like, do I need to be cold plunging in zone 2 cardioing? Like left and right. But that's dope, man. Anything else to that list?
Yeah, yes and no. I don't know about you. I think you ducked and dodged this like biomechanics obsession. And I like got wrecked by a wave of that stuff. And so got absolutely caught up. And I don't look at it in terms of regret, but like, I love Coach Cass. I love doing N1. I'm actually going back to N1 in March. Big fan. And I've loved because, I've loved the education I've gained from them, but I certainly went off the deep end in terms of how important that is for the average person and how I, as a coach, might speak to people about that stuff. And it's cool. There's educators out there that are doing a great job with this. It's just, if you go back in my content, which you should not do, nobody should do this. But there was a time, a good like 3 to 6 month period where like this was all I was posting about. And it turns out that isn't actually where my passion is. But I was, I don't look back at it negatively, but wondering exactly what angle your elbow needs to be on for exactly, which division of the rear delt, it's just information. Information isn't good or bad. That isn't necessarily where I want to put my eggs as an educator. I was in deep and look back at my content and I'm like, oh man, like at the bottom of every post, you should have written, this doesn't fucking matter at all. Like it's really not a big deal. And so, yeah, I've come full circle on that and just found a better way to implement that stuff without getting neurotic about it.
I love that, dude. I saw that wave. I saw that come. The reason I never jumped on is because I personally, like, my Jared geek brain likes that shit, but my content and from an education standpoint is all for the average client that we serve. And I'm just glad if Mrs. Jones pulls that bar to her chest and squeezes her shoulder blades, let alone like initiation and depression of the shoulder blades, then drive the elbows down at a 35-degree angle and then stop immediately. Right. You know what I mean? So that's why I never jumped on that bandwagon. I actually just had, I don't know if I'm sure you know him. Like, do you know Austin Current?
Yeah, it was just on my podcast. I love
there Austin. We go. Yeah. So Austin, this week, his podcast is on my show is airing right now as we speak. But that was the thing that I was talking with Austin about that I love about his content is I feel like it meets both sides. And I feel like this is where the magic educator happens, where they go, cool, here's the optimal way. But if you have optimal to the point of debilitating anxiety over here, then so simple, it's not effective. Like you want to talk about like old school, like Branch Warren style lateral raises, just like technically that dumbbell went up and down, but no muscle was used in that process. But like, where's the Venn diagram in the middle of it? And I think that's where the magic is for all of that.
I think that there's something very healthy about engaging in things that you find intellectually stimulating. And so I don't think enough people are going to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it. Is that I didn't come from an academic, I didn't go through an academic route here. And so I didn't really ever have that sense of real confidence in knowledge in something super in depth. I was more of a generalist. I had worked as a personal trainer for a long time. I was certified, but as I became and dived more into some of these like post academia forms of academia. So whether that was like doing MNU or was doing all the N1 courses, I was almost like, in an egotistical way, that sounds a little bit too negative, but I was getting off to this intellectual stimulation, and because I hadn't had it prior, and it felt nice to like be able to like out argue people about stuff. And I definitely got caught up in that. And I think a lot of people are still caught up in that, and that's okay. I'm not looking down. Listen, I looked back and I was like, man, you were arguing for the sake of arguing. You were, you know, diving into the nitty gritty details, like almost to like prove to yourself that you're smart enough to understand this stuff. And I'm all for intellectual stimulating. I'm doing it now with cardio. It's the same cycle for me, except now I'm way more self-aware, where I'm working with a coach, Alex Viata. It's like fucking smartest dude ever. And he's been mentoring me for the last like 8 months. And we have gone just like absolutely in depth, to the point where you don't need to go that in depth. But I'm way more self-aware now of like, I know that I find this intellectually stimulating, but I'm going to recoil back to a place of like, how is this practical? You know, my own podcast namesake of where optimal meets practical. And so just way more self-aware of like, intellectual stimulation is cool, but acknowledge, you know, come back to like, hey, who are you trying to serve, you know?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I totally forgot that's the name of your podcast, because the whole time when we were talking about that, I'm like, what the fuck is the name of it again? But a thing so with the reason I say that without remembering what your podcast name is, a statement that I use a lot with like client conversations or content is if optimal is not practical, it's no longer optimal. So I would be curious your thoughts continued on that. Like, I mean, it's basically the name of your show. So what are your thoughts on that?
On that as a phrase,
or like the meaning of that statement? Like for you, your show's called We're Optimal Meets Practical. And so my caveat is, because if optimal is not practical, it's no longer optimal, because you're not going to do shit. So, but what are your thoughts on that methodology and thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that 100%. I take clients on, I tell you, we'll get as nerdy as possible for the sake of this being fun. And the minute that is not fun anymore, and it becomes a downside, and it's not like when we both say optimal, we are taking into account many different contexts: enjoyment, sustainability, personal preference, physiology of what is actually physiologically optimal is just one piece of that context of what is actually optimal. And so I tell all my clients, I'm like, hey, I'll answer every question you have. We'll go as nerdy as we want. I'll always tell you how much this stuff matters. But if at any point simplifying it becomes more optimal, because, you know, you end up enjoying the process more, and there's less, you know, you widen up the goalposts, and you feel like you're fucking it up less, because I tell you, all I need you to do is, you know, sit down in this machine and use full range of motion, and maybe don't tuck your elbows at your sides. And we keep it simple that way, which is plenty, by the way. I'm 100% on board with that, in terms of optimal doesn't just mean physiologically optimal. It means, you know, what you can sustain and what's going to, man, at the end of the day, what's the point of all this? The point is to stay in the game for as long as possible. And so that's optimal. What's going to get you to stay in the game and not quit today, and continue to go and continue to do it and find enjoyment in it. There was just a dude, I have a post that me and my editor are working on, about this 93-year-old dude who's like a 4-time masters rower, which like 85 and over. And like, he didn't start exercising until he was 73. And since 73, for the last 20 years, he's like, just talked a lot about how much enjoyment he's gotten out of it. And I'm like, that's like, this guy's everything, man. Like, this is, first of all, he didn't start exercising until he was 73, and he's healthy as shit.
Yeah.
But there's also the fact that here's a guy late to the game and totally plugged into the fact that it's got to be enjoyable. And so I absolutely love that. And yeah,
I agree with that completely. You know, what's funny is, I know I'm not a 73-year-old rower, but whenever, my favorite thing, my outside of like my normal day-to-day, my favorite hobby that I do for purely enjoyment is jujitsu, right? Love jujitsu. But the reason, when I started jujitsu 5.5 years ago, my whole thing was, all right, I need a hobby that makes me move, that keeps me healthy outside of normal lifting stuff, that I just want to show up to. That was it. And jujitsu was it. And one day I woke up and I go, it's been 5 years, literally, like consistency and timeline. 5 years went by like that. And it's purely because I let go of, I'm not focusing on how fast can I get the next promotion? How fast can I go through the belts? I just want to show up and play with my classmates. Like, I just want to go and roll around with a bunch of fucking sweaty dudes. And then before I know it, like, adherence is like, I don't hardly ever miss a class unless I'm traveling or something like that. But I think that's a big piece where if enjoyment is not at the top of your list, or tactics to make this more doable for the long term, then we're failing.
I'll throw one to you though. So we're just to because I think it would be an important part of this conversation. What if you are someone listening to this who says, I don't enjoy any of this? There's not a form of movement I've experienced, at least to this point, that I've enjoyed at all. What does that person do?
So I've always when we see that, I think that's when I go to number one is finding. I have two trains of thoughts. Number one, finding things if they have these almost weird rules in their head that are making things harder. For example, I had a client one time, her definition of exercise and movement and fitnessy stuff, it had to be inside a gym setting. It had to be for an hour plus. She had to be sore for 4 days and she had to be sweating her ass off. If it did not meet all of those boxes, it did not count as exercise. Turns out homegirl loves yoga, loves dancing, loves walking her dog. But because of her definition, those didn't count. And I'm like, okay, well, sorry, sweetheart. Those are now exercise. And that's now week one of your plan. Dog walk Monday, Wednesday, Friday, yoga Tuesday, Thursday, whatever. But let's say, to play devil's advocate, let's say someone hates all of it. I think it's important to then go intrinsic and find the intrinsic whether it be the intrinsic outcome someone is wanting, whether that be like, what's the reason behind all this? I don't want to die early. Okay, then that's all we're thinking about right now is if you hate everything about this, hate all of it, then we need to find the things that make you feel better, that make you more confident, that make you intrinsically happier because of an action that you don't want to do. It's like what everyone says, like, no one goes and does a workout and feels worse when they leave. I've actually done that. I've had plenty of those where I go to a workout and I'm like, yep, I feel just as terrible. Those are very few and far between, but I think it's important when that person comes across, we have to go intrinsic hard. What do you think?
No, I love that. That was going to be where I was going to go is I love the poking at what that person means by exercise and finding out that actually they're holding it to too high of a standard, lowering that bar. People don't like lowering the bar. People don't like that phrase. It's like they're bitching out, you know? But what I've loved in the past couple of years is again, like learning about how little you have to do to get such a high percentage of the benefits of exercise. Like lifting like 1 to 2 times per week gets you like 80% of the available health benefits of resistance training. And we have people that are like, 5 times a week, 90 minutes, and they're afraid of going down 4 days or something. I'm like, yo, you are like 10xing what you need for health. But the other thing is, like you said, is going intrinsic is my therapist would say, be curious, look at that with curiosity as to like why it is that you look at a walk outside, you look at, getting on a bike, you look at, whatever, going for a hike. Once we put those all on the table, and if you say, hey, I still hate all that stuff, I still look at that really adversely or I don't want to do it, being curious about that. And I know it's not as easy. I think being curious is the tip of the iceberg. It's not like, oh, yeah, just because I'm curious, now I love it. No, of course not. But I think that like you said, would indicate a moment of we should go intrinsic, we should go inside, we should be curious as to why that is. I think there would be something fantastic to learn from going down that route.
Mm-hmm. I think the other piece is if we take it a step further and someone's like, I have no intrinsic, because there's going to be that asshole that's like, nope, I would put this on the scale with every other thing you do in your life you hate doing, but you do it to avoid the pain of something greater. For example, I don't ever feel like brushing my teeth, but I like not having cavities. I hate paying taxes, but it's rather than going to jail for tax evasion, right? Like I know some people love it. I can't tell you the amount of times I felt motivated showering. You ever like at the end of the day, you're like, fuck, I need to get a shower tonight. Or you get up early, like, fuck, I just would rather lay in bed. But I also don't want to smell bad. And I want my wife to want to be intimate with me, right? I think it's those things where if someone is so far in a negative place where like, I hate all of it, well then, psychology teaches us that the only 2 drivers of human behavior changing is pursuit of pleasure or avoidance of pain. What is that avoidance of pain? And then we put it on the same level as teeth brushing, showering, and paying your taxes.
You know what? I don't know if it's still a thing, but this like comfy cardio thing. Have you been, it's like a TikTok thing. It's comfy cardio. So comfy cardio is like this phrase that's like, instead of making exercise this like big sweaty go to the gym thing, comfy cardio could be like getting your walking pad out in your bedroom and like putting on a scented candle and a movie in a dimly lit room in your PJs and going for like a walk and it being like comfy and cozy. and not like fucking hardcore, grip it and rip it. And that I absolutely love that so much of like another kind of lowering the bar, reshaping the definition of what exercise needs to be. And I think there are a lot of my clients who have felt like they have like you said, that their definition of exercise is maybe up here, when in reality it's like, hey, like take your walking pad out and watch some trash TV for a half hour and have a moment to disconnect. I think there's a huge element of you don't like it. Okay, we can go down that route. I think we should be intrinsic. What's going to help us do it anyway in the meantime? And sometimes it's multitasking. I'll tell you right now, I'm a big soccer fan. I'm a big soccer fan. And I hate doing cardio. The funny part is I'm huge into cardio right now, or hybrid training, whatever. Train for a half marathon, all that stuff. I don't really like doing it, to be honest with you. It's not like I don't really enjoy the training. In particular, I don't like the assault bike. And so I
have something to add to that when you're done. I have something to add to that.
Yeah. Is my favorite soccer team, when they play every week, for the first half, 45 minutes, I'm on the bike. And I say, hey, every time I'm only letting, without making rules sound so constraining and negative. I'm not saying you're only allowed to watch it or else. It's like, I just know I'm going to habit stack. Hey, Arsenal's on at 3:00. Today, there's a game on at 2:45 I want to watch. First 45 minutes, I'll do it on the bike. Nothing crazy. Just got a little zone 2. Nothing crazy. And so for me, that habit stack of like, Jenna's like, oh, want to watch a episode of Shameless? I'm like, cool. Maybe I'll hop on the bike. Maybe I'll hop on the treadmill and just walk during that. And because it doesn't, the irony of all of it is like that action of like watching that show is equally enjoyable while I'm walking on the treadmill or laying down on the couch. And even if I'm exhausted, I'm not running. I'm just like walking at like 2.5 to 3.5, and so I think some form of like habit stacking or, watching something or listening to something that you feel not a guilty pleasure, but you feel like is something you really enjoy, that will distract you from this thing you don't love and start to build a positive association around it.
I mean, literally on a really deep level, where this is the epitome of neurological association. There's so much psychology that goes into that. I mean, we all know, maybe we all don't know, but I mean, psychology teaches us that the mind and nervous system crave what's most familiar. It's why the brain is just about self-preservation, not happiness. So if someone has a history of exercise equals bad, like the stove is hot, the metaphorical stove is hot, that hurts, we don't like it, and exercise is bad. But now all of a sudden you put that activity with something that you love, let's say trash TV, let's say going on a walk with your wife, let's say taking the dog, whatever the thing is, your brain is, from a neurological level, from like a neural pathway side, is literally firing and wiring differently. And then we do that with over a consistent period of time. And now all of a sudden your relationship with exercise gets healed. This is exactly how we fix someone's relationship with exercise. So I think it's really important to find little ways. It almost feels like a cheat code to do some of these little like hacks and go like, well, what do I love doing? Well, I like watching trash TV. Let's pull out the walking pad or whatever it is. So
yeah, love that. Great.
The assault bike perked my ears because right now I hate that motherfucker. And my current coaches, so currently the goals that I'm working with my coaches is everything is geared around jujitsu right now. I just want to get way harder to beat, essentially. So I want to be stronger, movement patterns better, and my conditioning like a freight train. Well, that means I have to do cardio like a freight train, and everything is pre-workout intervals on the assault bike, and I want to just not go. It's so bad, but
yeah, it's brutal. I mean, it's a great piece. I'm very thankful for its existence, but it is it's never fun. It doesn't get easier. It's not one of those. Yeah.
Well, along those same lines, like whenever I'm doing the assault bike and we were talking about how does someone do something they don't want to do, I'm not thinking about trying to convince myself I love this motherfucker when I'm like breathing like an 800-pound gorilla. What I'm thinking about is like, I don't get tired and get squished as much in jujitsu for my training partners just because I'm winded. Like that, I go intrinsic. I go, well, that's what my actual core desire. I want to quit getting beaten jujitsu because of cardio and not technique. So that's why I'm doing this. And it makes it easier.
Yeah. Doing the cardio for me, what I'm learning is I thought that by doing it more, I would enjoy doing the thing more. And that's not happening. It's happening a little bit, but I think it's plateaued. Like I think I look at my weekend run and I don't dread it anymore, but I'm certainly not like I think about my lifts where I look forward to it. But I think three things have helped me. And I think that maybe I'll just share. It's not like I don't expect everyone to be helped by these things, but the first is thinking about it's the same thing you said, what this ultimately helped me do. And I think that what are some things that I love that will be easier when I do this? I love playing soccer. I'm in some soccer leagues. I'll perform better there. I love hiking and traveling and going on big hiking trips with my friends. And so I'm like, okay, what's the next trip we have planned? Okay, we're going to Yosemite. We're going to be doing some, 10 to 20 mile hikes. I'm always in the worst shape. I want to show up and I want to do well. It's going to allow me to do the other things, maybe not this thing I don't love, but it's going to let me do those other things. The other two can go both ways. The big one is goal setting. I think goal setting goes both ways. I think goal setting can make something more fun. It can make something super stressful. I mean, I've seen the whole gamut. And so with lifting, and I'm kind of both of these at the same time. With lifting, I hate goal setting. I've never been a power lifter. I've never been a bodybuilder. I don't give a shit how much I lift. Of course I track stuff and I, aim for general progression over time and all that. But like, I really like, if you told me, hey, this year we're hitting 100-pound dumbbells for 10, like, I don't care at all. That will make it less, fun for me. I already feel it. I'm feeling it just saying that out loud. And I think that's because I genuinely like lifting. And so layering on the goal for me convolutes it a little bit and I enjoy it less. With running, I don't love the running. So training for a half marathon, I'm training for a 5K right now. I'll probably train for an ultra trail run in my lifetime. I'm really bad at cardio. So when I say that, I mean, in the very, very far in the future, but like for me, the goal setting has been helpful because I think it's because I don't like doing the thing, but I really like the reward of working towards a goal. And the last one is having a coach and seeing if intellectual stimulation makes it more fun. It might not, and having coach, again, all that stuff can go both ways. But if I didn't have a coach, if I didn't feel intellectually stimulated and able to talk about, what's going on in the body. And again, this is so, catered to me and what I do, obviously, but maybe having a coach helps, maybe setting some goals helps. And maybe thinking about what this is going to let you do. And it could be everything from not die to, hike the Grand Canyon, to, pick up my kids, play with my grandkids. I think those are some things that have helped me, but I could see the latter ones going both ways.
Totally. One thing, speaking of kids, that I wanted to ask you is, ever since you said that you guys were expecting, which is incredible, by the way, that's congratulations on that. Are you, when you said it's a little girl, when's she due?
Yeah. Mid-April. So coming up fast.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So no kids on our end, but I am what I call a super uncle. Both my brothers are having children, like a contest. So,
nice.
but I am that uncle. So, love, and they're all girls, like across the board. Awesome. So I'm like, love the girls. But so my question is, I always like to ask this, and I know your answer may change once obviously the little one's here, but and I actually would be cool to maybe a year from now and 2 years from now, maybe if we kind of re-interview and see your thoughts on this, but what are your plans on how to the balance of all this stuff with the little one? So for example, I love to ask moms and dads that, who have it, what I call all figured out, where, obviously you want to set your daughter up for success and don't want her to, be unhealthy or things like that. But you also don't want her growing up scared of carbs and think sugar is the devil. So that, just like we teach our clients, but most people struggle with that with the kids. So as you are approaching fatherhood, what are your thoughts on how to navigate that?
Yeah. You mean how to maybe perhaps navigate setting my daughter up for a good relationship with this stuff, or with my own training?
So with her. So obviously you want her to be healthy and you want her to all the basically be healthy, but at the same time, you want her to have a fantastic relationship with food, not scared and having to count calories every second, whatever, all of that stuff. How do you plan on navigating that with, it's not just you doing it for you because you get it, but you have this sponge that's about to pop out?
Yeah. I just had Jordan on the podcast a couple months ago to talk about this. I was like, Jordan, help me with Jordan Syed. Sorry for the listener. I was like, help me. I was like, give me your answer. But yeah, so it's a kind of a cliche to say setting a good example, but I think I don't know. This is the last I've been going to therapy. My wife and I have been both individually going to therapy for the last 5 years. And I just feel so proud of the self-work that I've done, at least to get to a point where I'm just not in the same place I was when I was 25. in terms of relationship with body and relationship with training and relationship with nutrition and food and eating. And I really feel like if you can do a lot of that leg work, then it will take less of anything other than just being yourself. It will take less intent. It will take some intent. First of all, again, I always have to do this. Every time I talk about parenting, I need to just say a disclaimer of, I don't know shit about shit. I'm not a parent yet, but this is my take as of right now. Cause people come out of the woodwork of like, oh, these people, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not kidding. Okay. True. So, totally true. Put an asterisk on it. All I'm saying is Jenna and I feel very confident in leading with just be ourselves. And we are in a good place, and acknowledge when, there's moments of body dysmorphia slip in, or, binary good and bad language can slip in. And I think we've mostly eradicated both of those from our lives and feel like we're just in such a good place. I hope, in some ways, I really hope my daughter turns out like we are right now. And I'm very happy that we are in a place. I'm pumped for her, frankly, because if we had these kids, if we had her 5-6 years ago, I just think that we would have been, maybe it would have been a good impetus to change. It would have been a good motivation to be like, oh crap, we need to get our shit together. No more of this like picking apart our bodies and obsessing over how we look and losing the last 5 pounds and always being lean and good and bad, healthy, unhealthy sort of dichotomous thinking. But I really feel like we are in a good place. So personally speaking, mostly setting a good example. We have a home gym, which I'm so excited about, just to be able to have her around. Shout out to Joelle Samantha. I don't know if you know Joelle, but Joelle, yeah, she's got the most adorable girls, and they're, in the gym. Her little daughter was like deadlifting this morning, just melts my heart. And so I really can't wait for that. I think that's going to be awesome. But all of that to be said, all of the things that I think I'm in a good place, I think my wife's in a good place. I still think that there's things that I'll do and say that I feel good with because I've kind of worked through them, and I have an adult brain that can conceptualize complex things, and a daughter that might not be able to figure out the nuance and stuff of like, and I just can't wait for the questions from kids that you never thought you'd have to answer. Like one of my clients was like, I just had to explain to my daughter how food becomes poop. And she was like, I never thought that I'd have to answer that question and explain it to a 4-year-old or something. And so I'm looking forward to that, because I know that even though I know all the things that I need to know and I'm in a good spot, there's still going to be a moment where I'm stumped. And so I have yet to Jordan said, he's like, you're not going to know. He's like, you're not going to know until a question comes of like, hey daddy, like, can I have ice cream? And you're like, your knee jerk is like, oh, when you finish your vegetables, or, oh, like you got to finish this, or maybe, or no, that's bad, or not for breakfast. And so there are still, I think a lot of people hear a lot of the statements and they're like, hey, don't say that. I would agree with most of that stuff, but it's, I'll admit that I suspect it's trickier and a little bit slippery, more slippery than I'm expecting.
I love that answer. It's something that I've even been just an uncle, not even like a dad. The level of literalness, if that's a word, where if you say, no, we can't have that for breakfast, or no, that's vegetables first. Like kids take that so literally. Like I had a reminder of how I have to be very careful with what I say to my nieces in the world of being literal. So the oldest niece, her name is Lila. Lila's 3, and she is a little ginger firecracker. Okay. Yeah. And Lila, being a 3-year-old, sticky, the things, runny nose. And I go, and she's used to blowing her nose with like her dad, like Kleenex. And I say, hey, you need to blow your nose. And she just looks at me and does this. Snot rockets just shoot right out. And I'm like, fuck. Okay. I didn't say go get a Kleenex and blow your nose. I just said, hey, you need to blow your nose. And she goes, okay, Uncle Jared, and just blows snot rockets out everywhere. I'm like, okay. And then to the caveat with that, I go, and I back up because there's snot rockets. And now she thinks it's funny blowing her nose in the air 4 more times and chasing me around the room. But it's things like that. It's like, okay, I have to think about that differently. Because I thought blow your nose, which means, hey, let's go get a Kleenex and blow it. And she just goes, okay, right now. And snot's all over her shirt, So
awesome.
I love that. So let me ask you this. So much of our conversation has been around the long run, right? So do you think are some of the major principles for people who struggle with with the long run, like with struggle being like for example, I just dropped a free program in in my community. I call it Project 90. It's like a free 90-day thing, right? And the reason I did it the way I did, though, because took a census and I go, what's the average? I asked like almost 10,000 people in this group, hey, what's the average amount of time you make it before falling off? And the average answer was 14 days. Like that was it, 14 days of any plan whatsoever before whatever happens and they fall off. So you and I both agree this is a game of the long haul. Who can last it's not a contest, but like who can last the longest? What do you think are some of the key pillars that can help the people listening that'll go, oh, okay, that's where I went wrong, and to actually last the long haul with this thing?
Yeah, good question. A couple things that jumped to mind. One was running your own race and avoiding comparison, spending less time on social media. And it kind of will bleed into the second one. But for that, I think that there's just so much misunderstanding of health. And I think if you follow just like in the fitness space, I mean, the fitness space is not health related. It's not health forward. It's not health first. It's health also. And it's a lot of like the people that are posting, their workouts, their 4 or 5 day workout programs. I'm working out 9 days a week. Like that's not health, that's performance, and that's cool. And I'm upfront about that. But that bleeds into my second one, which is, people trying to do too much too fast. And I think that comes from not just social media, but it comes from a misunderstanding of what they need to do to get to the goal that they have. And that misunderstanding, I think, comes from a lot of social media and media and marketing. I just think that, there are so many people. The fitness space is full of people who are doing, by all accounts, great, working on eating more protein, more fiber, acknowledging that calories are a thing, walking more, but their perspective of how they're doing compared to what they think they should be doing makes them feel like they're doing nothing. And that gets in so many people's way. It either makes them feel like shit about what they're doing, like they're not doing enough, or it forces them to do way too much that they're ready for, or they would never enjoy, don't have to do. There are just so many people that come to me thinking they need my help. And they're like, I need your help. It's like, you don't need my help. Like you're doing everything awesome. Like you should be, what you need my help with is for me to tell you to go away. You're doing awesome. Mm-hmm. I coach too many people. I'll tell you right now, I coach way too many people that are already healthy that don't think they're healthy because they think healthy means I need to be shredded. And so, I'd say over 50% of the people that I help are already healthy. Mm-hmm. And that's fine because you can have goals that aren't health related, but like we got to be having that discussion of, hey, these pounds that you want to lose, they don't have to do with health, right? We're all on the same page here, right? And sometimes they're not aware of that. And I'd like to, and in the last couple of years, I've made a point to seek out people that are like actually maybe, again, I'm not the person who gets to decide where that line is, but in a place where they're actually really trying, they really will see a big quality of life, real tangible quality of life improvement from weight loss, body composition, improved exercise performance, all that stuff. And I just think that there's a lot of people out there who are, like you said, average time they stick to something is 14 days, probably because they bit off more than they could chew. Why did they bite off more than they could chew? Because of a perception of what they have to do to be healthy or get to where they want to go. And I think if we I think most people could look at the basics and they're just not sexy enough. But if everything they saw online was like, hey, have a protein and a plant with each meal, maybe have it all fit on one plate and, try and get on an eating pattern you can sustain and go for a 10-minute walk after you eat. It's like, we don't have any obesity anymore. And maybe that's an overstatement. It's certainly an overstatement, but there are such low hanging fruits with such big ROI. And I just think the average person's not doing them because they think that that's too simple.
I would agree with that completely. I feel like there's a level of almost I see this in jiu-jitsu where the statement that I'll make that we see newer people do or newer people follow is what they lack in skill, they're making up for in brute effort. Right. Like, so I was one of those. I came into jiu-jitsu. I was the biggest and strongest one in the room because I like the weight room. But I am a novice at best and brand new in jiu-jitsu. So I had these 130-pound kids wiping the floor with me because what I lacked in skill, I would just try to didn't matter, but I would get tired. I would do all the things. And because I wouldn't last long is because I tried to out effort a skill. a skill-based thing. And I feel like people do the same thing here because they struggle with showing up and doing the boring things. They're like, well, I can only make it a month. I'm going to go hard. I'm going to go do keto in a fasting window, taking these supplements with a Tim Ferriss morning and evening routine and track my macros. It's like, well, I'm not going to make it. So let me get it all out of my system and see what I can lose in the month versus like, it doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I think I'm battling against, I have a 4-day per week program that I offer, and the workouts are maybe 45 to 60 minutes. So let's say upper end 4 hours of training. And I have way more people that come at me for it's not enough than people saying that it's a lot. I mean, it is well beyond the threshold needed to make gains. It's well beyond the threshold needed to like look like you lift and look muscular or fit and whatever those words subjectively mean to you. It's well more than enough. And so it's just another example of like, yo, we have really skewed the numbers here in terms of what you need to do to, and I'm not trying to lowball you. I'm just saying that there's everyone should bring that down a little bit. And I think we'd all be a little bit more consistent.
Sure. I mean, do we see that with our clients? We have that same conversation on every level, the mind side, the mouth side, and the movement side, where someone's used to doing 6 day a week beach body, single leg Bosu ball bullshit kind of workouts. And we're like push pull legs or or just 3 upper body splits or I'm sorry, three total body splits, 30, 40 minutes. And a common thing is, no, it's not enough versus like, no, this is what you need. Same thing with nutrition. Actually, a really common thing we hear when clients start to make their really like hit the, that momentum stride where they're really like doing all the things. But right around then, it's really common we hear, hey, I feel like I should be working out more and eating less. And I feel like it's too boring. Meanwhile, this person went from looking 9 months pregnant to not. Right. Or they went from being never consistent to really consistent, or from never losing any weight to the best results they've ever had with the least amount of effort, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I see that a ton. Absolutely. I nothing makes me happier than taking a person who, Jenna always laughs at me. Like if somebody really comes at me about the program of like, what is this? It's so low volume or something. Nothing makes me happier than a year from now, that person being like, wow, I absolutely love the program. Like, wow, I have all this time back for my kids and my spouse and this other hobby I wanted. And I got back into hiking and running or bingo club or whatever. And I have all this time back and I'm still making progress. And nothing makes me happier than turning that person into a believer.
Yeah. Or my favorite is like, oh, this is too little. Good. Oh, it's not enough volume. Awesome.
Kill it.
Like it's how it's supposed to. That's like saying my marriage is so fucking good. And it's like, that's great. The fact that you think it shouldn't be is the problem, Yeah. So, fuck, I can't believe we've already been going for almost 45 minutes. Dude, I love talking to you. I feel like I could talk to you all day.
Good job.
So wrapping up, what are you excited about right now? Other than obviously the little one, but what other things is Jordan Lips fired up and excited about right now that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm certainly fired up about, I can't lie. I'm fired up about this hybrid stuff about training and running, not running anything. I don't care. I'm cardio agnostic. If you want to bike or row or spin or whatever, it's awesome. And I think that there's, it's interesting because it's like in some ways very bad for business. Like I'm the hypertrophy guy, my program is called the hypertrophies, and so like, I've talked about that even in therapy of like, I'm going through a bit of an identity shift myself. And I need to reconcile like that's at face value bad for business. But, at the end of the day, the truth is trust my gut. It's led me, just be myself and continue to like push myself on whatever feels right in the moment. And so continuing to beat that drum and almost like make up for lost time of like encouraging that people don't do that. And so, I've really been taking on a lot of clients who want to either train for a race or just start to acknowledge that maybe they, want to be doing a little bit of both. My favorite are people who used to be runners. And these are people you and I come into contact with all the time, used to be runners or swimmers or bikers. And then they came into the fitness space and all of a sudden it got absolutely shit on. You shouldn't do cardio. Cardio kills your gains. You just need to lift. Cardio doesn't help you lose fat. Cardio doesn't change the way you look. Which, okay, is probably kind of true, but that it transpired into
demonized.
You shouldn't do this anymore. Yeah. And so we've discouraged so many people. And what I've loved is like people being like, every person that I've taken on has been someone who used to do a lot of this, who was told indirectly or directly via media and stuff that they should stop doing this. Women shouldn't be doing cardio because of hashtag hormones and menopause. And now there's nuance here of like,
sure,
of overall health, and people who are like, I only do cardio and only do R theory, only do high intensity all the time. And yes, let's talk about that. And maybe there's room for us to optimize like the overall stress on your body. Sure. But I'm taking on all these clients that are like, I used to be a runner. I fucking loved it for years and I stopped doing it. And I'm like, well, why? And they're like, well, I kind of got the feeling that it wasn't good for me and that I should just lift. And I'm like, yeah, that's my bad. Like that's my bad. I mean, even if I would never have said that explicitly, sure. I'm in that bucket of like, I didn't encourage you to not stop, and so that's been really fun. I've really enjoyed that a lot. And yes, that's where my next, I'm sure you do this all the time where like neither of us are in a job that there's a clear ladder of where you'll be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So I don't know about you, but I work in smaller chunks. I work in like 1 to 2 year chunks of, and every 1 or 2 years, my passion doesn't do a 180, but we live, we grow, we experience, and we want to do something else. And so I know that that's my thing now of like, hey, this is going to keep me in the game, doing something I feel passionate about. And so helping people get jacked, but also do some cardio, maybe train for some races. And yeah, that's kind of where my head's at.
I love that, dude. I love that. I think it's super important. I think it's also important to be able to adapt like that. Like I look back at just what I was posting a year ago, 2 years ago, and it's my stuff has completely changed. I think it's important though. I think a lot of people in the coaching business marry in like this thing. And then as their evolution changes, they're like, no, I have to keep doing this. And it ends up leading to burnout. You're not happy with what you're doing and you don't love the business anymore. And then you quit and go get a job somewhere else. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Where can these lovely people find you?
Yeah, social media on Instagram at Jordan Lips Fitness. I got a podcast where optimal meets practical. We should have you back on. I want to do this to spark some thoughts.
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to pick your brain about something, so we can do that. That's where I'm at. If you shoot me a DM, I'll answer. You got a question, let me know.
Hell yeah. I love it, dude. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this again. We need to definitely not go 3 years without talking. It's almost like something, it's like on the outside looking in, it's like, did something happen? Like, no, it's just, we both work and look up and 3 years went by. So
that's exactly what happens. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, dude. And we are back. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the show. I know if you stuck around, you got a lot out of it. Be sure if you got a lot of value out of this, I want you to reach out to Jordan. Reach out to him, hit him up on Instagram, be like, yo, I heard you on Jared's show. You were incredible, and show some appreciation to him. Now, before you go, we got a few different things. One, we got all Jordan's contact info in the description. That way you guys can connect with him and whatnot. But then depending on where you're at on this journey, I have a few things for you in the description. Number one is if you're newer to this and not really quite sure where to get started, you should go through my free course. I have a completely free course via email. Just give us the best email and we'll send it over to you. It's a video course that walks you through A to Z on how to lose weight, keep it off, and never struggle ever again. Like, I know that's a pretty big, bold claim, but it's called the Fat Loss Checklist. So I walk you through every single thing that you need to be successful, to unlearn all your old bullshit and how to do this the right way. Now, let's say you're less new and you kind of have an idea on what to do, but you're a person that thrives in community. You're a person that thrives with other people. You should absolutely join my free Facebook group. I have a really amazing community inside a Facebook group. It's completely free. I don't charge for it. I put some of my best content outside of the podcast in this group, and I built it for the sole reason of you need a home base. Most people are lost, alone, and struggling with this fat loss stuff. Even if they're doing well, they feel alone in the process, and that's never okay. Everyone needs a home base that you can lean to, that you can get grounded with, you can get loved on, you can get supported. So that's what I created inside my Fat Loss Simplified Facebook community. So there's a link, just fill out the questions and I'll make sure my staff lets you in. And then finally, if you are sick and tired of doing this on your own and you just want help, but because you're coming from the podcast, that means a lot to me. And I want to make sure that you can get into coaching if that's a good fit, if that's something that you want to look into. So below there's I have a special link that puts you to the front of the line in terms of coaching applications. If you are tired of doing this on your own, you like the way I do my thing, and you'd like to see about the possibility of working together, you should absolutely fill that out. Be totally honest. Let us know where you're at, what's going on, and then we'll set up a call and see, if things are a good fit or not. Otherwise, that's it. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you next week.